I remember the day everything changed as vividly as if it happened an hour ago. My name is Gabrielle Gabby to my friends, and once I believed the world was bright, fair, and full of promise if you just worked hard enough. But those illusions shattered the day my boss, Sharon Reeves, stood before the board of directors and announced my innovative marketing strategy as her own. She offered them a glittering plan, complete with a well-scripted presentation, polished slides, and enthusiastic confidence the fruits of my labor performed under her name. The laughter and applause afterward felt like a personal funeral dirge sounding in my ears. When Sharon ended her presentation, the board members were on their feet, some in disbelief that such a strategy could be devised so quickly and executed so effectively. I remembered how my cheeks flushed red. 1,000 protests swirled through my mind, but each time I'd opened my mouth, the words died in my throat. I had no proof. She had carefully stripped my name off every draft, claiming corporate ownership for her own files. I'd poured my soul into that project for 6 relentless weeks, meeting with potential partners, analyzing data, and drafting every detail. And yet, in front of that room full of executives, my idea had become Sharon's. She knew the importance of timing. Only minutes later, our CEO, Mr. Armstrong, offered her a promotion with a hearty smile. She was to be the new director of marketing. It was my work that put her in that position, my dedication and intelligence. But all the reward I received was a patronizing pat on the back after the meeting. A routine good job, Gabby from Sharon, and a condescending smile as if she'd done me some great favor by acknowledging me at all. In the following days, I tried to keep my rage contained. At first, I thought, I need to be professional. I can't storm into her office and demand justice. The board respects her. No one will take my word over hers. So I sank deeper into my tasks. Another project demanded completion. Budgets demanded adjustments, and clients wanted updates. But the anger festered inside me like a wound left untreated. It nibbled at the edges of my mind, a constant whisper. She stole from you. She's collecting the spoils while you struggle in the shadows. It was a powerful betrayal, and the worst part was how easily I had let her walk away with it. Shame stung as fiercely as the betrayal. The next week, Sharon's promotion was officially announced via a company-wide email. They praised her brilliant leadership and the groundbreaking strategy she had developed. My heart shrank at every new rung she ascended. Suddenly, she had a massive corner office, new business cards, and an assistant who fetched her coffee. The same people who used to overlook her began praising her, wanting to be in her favor. It was nauseating to watch. The final blow that shattered my restraint came from a casual conversation with an older colleague, Jennifer, who had known Sharon for much longer. I overheard her commiserating with someone else in the break room. Yes, she's done it before. She gets away with it because she's always been favored by management. Nobody has had the guts to stand up to her. Those words stuck in my ears like a chunk of lead. It wasn't the first time Sharon had stolen credit. And apparently, she knew how to camouflage her misconduct under manipulative charm. I made a decision that day in the break room, gripping my coffee cup so hard I could have broken the handle. If everyone else is too afraid, I can't be. I have to take her down. And so began my plan. I had no roadmap, only an unwavering desire to see her toppled from her stolen throne. I started by biding my time, acting the diligent employee. Sharon took it for granted that I'd remain as meek as I always was. My first goal was collecting evidence. You see, I had something she didn't, specialized knowledge in analytics and digital tracking. If she'd bothered to ask, she would have known that I had traced every email, every program, every data source used in the marketing plan back to my private server, where all of my preliminary drafts were securely stored. However, corporate culture was a labyrinth of legalities, so I had to be strategic. I needed more than just a few old file stamps. Weeks passed, and Sharon happily flaunted her new position. She invited important clients to dinner, demanded data updates from me, and occasionally summoned me for menial tasks. I played the cooperative underling, smiling, nodding, and playing the game. But in the quieter hours, after most of the office emptied out, I was sifting through the private notes, email chains, and timeline logs. I saved every piece I could find that proved my authorship. And that was just the beginning. Though humiliating, I went along with Sharon's tasks to gather more intel on her methods. My role gave me a front row seat to her new marketing proposals. It wasn't long before I saw she was clueless without me, constantly relying on my input to improve or finalize every concept. She was so used to leeching off my ideas that she assumed I'd keep spoon-feeding her. But I gave her the bare minimum. My overarching plan was bigger than sabotage. I wanted to orchestrate her entire downfall. I focused on forging alliances. Not everyone in the company liked Sharon. Some resented her rapid promotion, while others quietly griped about her abrasive attitude and credit-stealing ways. I approached each person carefully, giving subtle hints, inviting them for coffee, empathizing about small grievances. With every conversation, I inched a little closer to the center of their frustrations. A crucial ally proved to be Miss Diaz, our compliance officer, whom everyone joked was the invisible hawk. She was rarely seen, but her presence was always felt. The rumors said she was extremely thorough in investigating corporate misconduct. Unfortunately, she was never given a single complaint or piece of evidence to pin Sharon. I scheduled a private meeting with her. On a quiet Wednesday afternoon, I ventured into her small office tucked away behind HR. She stared at me from behind round glasses. She was a middle-aged woman, her expression reading a permanent mixture of skepticism and caution, as though she expected everyone to have a hidden agenda. I told her, "Miss Diaz, I have reason to believe that Sharon Reeves is not only taking credit for work that isn't hers, but also misrepresenting the financial data on the new marketing initiative." Although I was shaking inside, I forced my voice to remain steady. "I have proof, but I need your help and your discretion." She studied me for a moment. "I'll need to see your evidence," she said, her voice measured and cool. I handed her a flash drive containing meticulously organized files, including emails with timestamps, video recordings of meetings, and voice memos. I'd learned to record some of Sharon's instructions on my phone, especially the ones where she threatened me or demanded. I wiped my name from documents. Miss Diaz promised to review the files. I left her office, heart hammering, but relief made my every step lighter. A small spark of hope kindled in my chest. I wasn't alone anymore. There was someone else who could see the truth. Meanwhile, Sharon continued to make her moves. She started working on a major partnership deal with Varnell Tech, an enormous technology conglomerate. If the deal was successful, it would further cement her position as an untouchable figure in the company. Word was that, if she clinched that partnership, the board might even consider her for an executive position beyond the marketing director role. She was far from done climbing. My stress escalated. If Sharon managed to secure that agreement without a hitch, she'd amass enough influence to sweep away any allegations. I'd heard stories of executives burying lawsuits, shredding evidence, or twisting the narrative so thoroughly that the true victims were painted as villains. I couldn't let her have that power. That was when I made my second calculated move, sabotage. But I had to be strategic. I didn't want to get rid of the deal entirely. I wanted it to be as messy as possible. If Miss Diaz was going to investigate wrongdoing, then I needed to bring evidence of Sharon's unscrupulous tactics to the surface. Knowing Sharon's style, I predicted she'd try to falsify data about projected returns to dazzle Varnell Tech executives. She would pad the numbers, promising more than we could realistically deliver. After all, if the partnership looked lucrative, Varnell Tech might sign the contract swiftly, awarding her all the glory she craved. I discovered that the data model she was using to project growth was one of my earlier prototypes. It had multiple disclaimers about its margins of error, disclaimers Sharon had conveniently erased. So, late one night with no one else in the office, I made some changes to the data model. I manipulated the back-end code to highlight inconsistencies the moment the falsified numbers were plugged in. If Sharon fed the model unrealistic data, it would generate contradictory results, creating a giant red flag for any astute observer. Sure enough, the next morning, Sharon requested a final run of the projections. My heart pounded, but I acted the innocent employee once again, running the data behind the scenes. I watched as glaring anomalies flashed on my screen in angry red lines. Sharon tried to hide it, but her face went pale. I feigned confusion. Is there a problem with the model? The results don't make sense. Tapping her manicured nails on my desk, she forced a tight smile. Must be an error. Run it again, she ordered, voice quivering slightly. I shrugged, ran it again, got the same results. Her arrogance had led her to skip thorough checks. In her pursuit of immediate success, she never suspected me. What was more damning, I'd purposely included coded text that referenced the disclaimers she'd erased. There was now a stark highlight of what Sharon should have known if she were indeed the originator of the model. Anyone reading the final printout would question why she'd insisted on forging ahead when the disclaimers were so blatantly ignored. Sharon, desperate, closed out the anomaly-laden file and decided to present the original, fudged version to the Varnell executives. She was certain she could talk her way through any complexities. But in doing so, she stepped into the very trap I'd laid for her. As the weeks rolled on, Miss Diaz became more and more involved. She began questioning my colleagues about the authenticity of marketing documents. Several people confided in me that they'd been pulled aside for private interviews. Sharon caught wind of these compliance check-ins and started to panic. She barked orders at everyone, commanding them to stay silent or risk losing their jobs. Employees quietly complained, frustration brewing at how she kept pushing them into corners. The tension in the office was electric. A storm was brewing on the horizon. On the day of the contract signing with Varnell Tech, Sharon marched in wearing a triumphant smile, her expensive heels clicking against the polished floor. She was wearing a sleek, grey dress that screamed confidence. I could practically taste the smugness emanating off her. I had a part to play in the meeting as the presentation operator, clicking through slides. The Varnell Tech reps, solemn-faced professionals, sat at one end of the conference table. Our CEO, Mr. Armstrong, and other executives sat at the other side. Sharon stood at the front, controlling the room, exuding an air of superiority. She launched into her presentation, pacing back and forth as she presented the flawless data. Slide after slide, she relished every statistic, promising growth that no competitor could match. Meanwhile, the first stared at the flickering screen, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the real analysis. My heart hammered, and a film of sweat coated my palms. If I timed this incorrectly, I risked exposing myself. But if I did nothing, Sharon would finalize the contract, and her position would become unassailable. When Sharon arrived at the final portion of her pitch, the one referencing my marketing model, my finger hovered over a specific key. All I had to do was press it, and I did. The next slide appeared, the disclaimers. All the text Sharon had removed was there, in large font. The disclaimers spelled out the model's constraints and the caution about data accuracy. The slide read, "Discrepancy found due to manual data manipulation. DOMS consultation recommended to ensure validity." Dead silence. My entire body tensed as though bracing for an explosion. Sharon froze mid-sentence, her mouth opening and closing, like a fish gasping for breath. Mr. Armstrong stared at me, confusion and a flicker of anger in his eyes. The Varnell Tech reps exchanged concerned glances. I cleared my throat. Apologies for the confusion. It appears there was an error uncovered in the data modeling. This slide was part of the original disclaimers written by the lead developer. My voice wavered, but still managed to sound confident. It seems that part was incorrectly removed. Sharon's face was white. There was no escaping it. In real time, the entire board and the visiting executives were seeing that the data was not just skewed, but deliberately manipulated. The last thing these distinguished business people wanted was an untrustworthy partner. I was afraid she might do something dramatic, call security, accuse me publicly, or start yelling. But she only stood there, chest heaving, eyes flashing with barely contained rage. She tried to salvage the moment. This must be some oversight, she stuttered, forcing a smile at the Varnell Tech executives. I assure you, the numbers are real. Perhaps the disclaimers were left there from an older version. But Miss Diaz was in that meeting too. She rose from her seat, arching an eyebrow. If there's an older version or a new version, we'd like to see them both. There have been concerns raised about the project's internal integrity. I suggest we postpone any final signatures until we can thoroughly verify the data. She turned toward the Varnell Tech team. I hope you'll understand the necessity for transparency. The executives nodded, expressions a mixture of unease and disappointment. One of them muttered something about needing to reconsider. Sharon's face was red and contorted with anger. She knew the deal was slipping through her fingers, right in front of everyone. And with Miss Diaz's direct involvement, a compliance investigation was now official. Every lie Sharon had told, every manipulative tactic, was floating to the surface like oil on water. The meeting adjourned on a sour note, and I slipped out before Sharon could corner me. But she didn't have to corner me to deliver her fury. The next morning, I found her waiting at my desk, eyes blazing. "You!" she hissed, her voice trembling. "You ruined that presentation on purpose. I know what you're doing. Don't think for a second you're getting away with this." My heart hammered, but I stared her down with a measured calm. I'd never felt before. I'm not doing anything except my job. If your data was inaccurate or disclaimers were omitted, you have only yourself to blame. The defiance in my tone fueled the anger in her eyes. Before she could retort, Miss Diaz appeared behind her. "Miss Reeves," Miss Diaz said, her voice tense with authority. "We need you in the conference room for a compliance review regarding project oversight." She glanced at me. "Gabrielle, if you could come with us as well, that'd be helpful." In a different life, hearing Miss Diaz say those words might have scared me. But at that moment, a sense of peace enveloped me. For the first time in that company, I felt protected. Months of collecting evidence and forging alliances were converging on this single showdown. In the compliance review, Miss Diaz presented a staggering amount of proof. Emails with my original concepts, file timestamps, testimony from colleagues who had watched Sharon force them to remove my name from the project. There were even voice recordings. My hands still trembled when the audio played, Sharon's commanding voice echoing in the silent room. "Make sure my name is on the final version before sending it to the board." Sharon's attempts to defend herself came off as desperate lies. She stammered that she was delegating tasks, that she was collaborating with me, that I was taking it out of context. But it was too obvious she was cornered. The final blow came when Miss Diaz revealed financial inconsistencies. Sharon had inflated the marketing budget figures, funneling surplus funds into dummy accounts, an ugly tactic that put the company at enormous risk. Murmurs of shock spread across the table as Miss Diaz presented the evidence. I glared at Sharon, thinking, "You didn't just steal credit, you endangered the company for personal gain." When the meeting ended, the verdict was clear. Sharon was suspended indefinitely pending further investigation, which practically meant she was done. By the end of the day, Mr. Armstrong called me in for a private meeting. My anxiety spiked, suspecting that after all was said and done, the company might just try to sweep this under the rug. But to my astonishment, he offered me a sincere apology, praising my contributions. Despite my anger, I felt a small sense of satisfaction at hearing him admit their mistake in trusting Sharon blindly. He then extended an offer, a chance to lead the marketing team on an interim basis. The official director role was vacant now, and they needed stability. "We'd be honored if you'd accept," he said solemnly, leaning forward with his hands folded on the desk. "Your dedication and expertise have proven invaluable." I paused, every memory flashing in my mind, the late nights, the tears, the quiet desperation I felt when Sharon took what was mine. Now they were handing me the position I should have been given in the first place. But my chest felt hollow. I'd spent so long obsessing over revenge that I wasn't sure if stepping into Sharon's old shoes at the same toxic company was the fresh start I truly needed. Still, I recognized the power in that moment. I realized I could rewrite my narrative. "I'll accept it for now," I told him. "But I have a condition. I want to re-evaluate how this company handles intellectual property and project credits. No one else should endure what I did." My voice trembled, but I forced it steady. "Mr. Armstrong agreed, looking more humble than I'd ever seen him. It didn't take long for the news to spread that Sharon was facing legal scrutiny and had lost her position. Colleagues were split. Some were relieved, and a few of her former allies suddenly developed selective amnesia, claiming they'd never liked her methods. The rumor was that she was going to face not only termination but potentially legal charges if they could prove the financial misconduct. She had lost the respect she'd once wielded and the promotion she'd stolen. Everyone's eyes opened to the dark corners of her ambition. In the days that followed, I was a whirlwind of mixed emotions, triumph, yes, but also an odd emptiness. Revenge wasn't a neat or pretty thing. It had consumed me for months. It gave me purpose, but it had also drained me. Late at night, I found myself replaying the dramatic downfall in my head. Was it worth it? Would it have been better to let it go and move on? The tension released slowly, like a wound that needs time to scab. Then, something unexpected happened. A week after Sharon was removed, I received a message from a former colleague, Trevor, who had left the company after Sharon pulled a similar stunt on him. He was now working at a forward-thinking startup that valued creativity and collaboration. Heard what happened. I'm so happy you got justice, he wrote. We have a place for you here if you ever want it. You'd be a star. His words lingered in my mind. If you ever want it, did I? My new position gave me the authority to prevent future injustices at my current workplace. But the environment was still tainted by memories of betrayal. Despite Mr. Armstrong's apologies and the new responsibilities, I felt a longing for a place that appreciated my worth from the start. A place that didn't wait until after a scandal to realize my value. I wrestled with the decision for several days. Then, one morning, I walked into my new office, a modest but well-windowed space I'd been given as the interim director, and instead of being elated by the view or the nameplate on the door, I felt stifled by the history. If I stayed, I would do good. I'd protect employees like me. I'd hopefully help shape a culture of fairness. But a deeper voice inside me craved a true, fresh start. So I took a leap of faith. I told Mr. Armstrong I appreciated the opportunity but was leaving. At first, he was stunned, offering a raise, more benefits, more corporate power. But no sum of money could negate the burn of betrayal. I'd already claimed my power back by exposing Sharon. The first had proven my competence, and in that sense, I had closure. Walking out on my final day, I felt neither anger nor regret. In fact, I felt lighter than I had in months. The memory of Sharon still echoed through those halls. I passed by her old corner office, now stripped of her nameplate, as I carried my box of belongings. I felt a tinge of pity. She'd sacrificed her integrity for fleeting glory and ended up with nothing. Yet I also felt a surge of self-assurance that I had not only taken back what was stolen, but used it to become stronger. When I stepped into the elevator for the last time, my phone buzzed Trevor again, confirming our lunch meeting to discuss my potential role at his startup. A small smile curved my lips. The future looked both terrifying and exhilarating. But I was no longer that meek employee who'd let someone else take my credit. I was a woman who had fought for justice and reclaimed her power. Now, I was forging my path on my own terms. That night, sipping tea by the window of my tiny apartment, I allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection. My heart no longer pounded with wrath. I realized that genuine happiness had found its way back to me, not just because I'd seen Sharon fall, but because I'd found the courage to stand up for myself. I understood that revenge, in the end, wasn't about destruction. It was about reclaiming control. And in the process, I discovered I was far stronger than I ever believed. The next day, I woke up with the sunbeams streaming into my bedroom, a sign of hope and renewal. And I was ready to move forward, an unburdened heart, a clear mind, and a determined spirit. I had lost illusions but gained an unshakable sense of self-worth. That, above all, was the greatest victory.